What would you do if gold wasn't a symbol of wealth, but the difference between life and death? Imagine a world where every glittering coin could buy food, safety, or just one more night alive. Tonight, we'll step into that desperate glow when gold meant survival. Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where the shimmer of gold isn't beauty. It's hunger, fear, and the faint sound of someone trying to buy another breath. You're standing in a cold medieval camp, the year somewhere between plague and war, where even the most faithful have begun to trade prayers for coins. The fire's low, the air thick with smoke and wet wool. You probably wouldn't survive this place for long. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to the sound of coughing. Not the kind you can ignore. This one rattles through the thin air, scraping against lungs already tired of surviving winter. Around you, tents sag beneath the weight of frost, and everything smells faintly of mold, sweat, and smoke. Somewhere nearby, a blacksmith is hammering, not weapons this time, but coins. Thin slivers of gold shaved from melted chalices stolen from the church itself. Gold, in this moment, is no luxury. It's medicine. It's bread. It's the difference between someone being buried in a shallow grave or being remembered in song. You can almost taste the metallic fear that hovers over the camp, sharper than the cold. In the distance, riders pass with sacks strapped tight to their saddles. People whisper that they're royal envoys, collecting tax for the war. But everyone knows better. The sacks are filled with teeth, molars yanked from plague victims who wore gold fillings. You feel the weight of it. Survival measured in ounces, morality sold by the gram. They call this age the Hunger Years. The fields have frozen, trade routes crumble under warlords' tolls, and people have learned the hard way that a loaf of bread might cost a coin that once built a cathedral. Historians still argue whether famine or greed broke Europe's back first. But here, kneeling beside a dying fire, you see how the two hold hands like lovers who refuse to part. You walk toward the river. A man stands waist-deep in the icy water, panning for gold that no one believes is really there. His hands are purple, his lips cracked. "The king pays for dust," he says without looking at you. "Not enough to live, just enough to hope." You wonder how many hopes have drowned in this same current. A child runs past you, clutching a coin. She's barefoot, laughing, her breath white against the dark. Then she slips and the coin falls into the mud. You both watch as it sinks, disappearing like sunlight under a storm. For a moment, you understand why people kill for it. Not because it's beautiful, but because it's small enough to hold when everything else is gone. Later that night, inside one of the tents, you find a woman boiling her wedding ring. She swears it will release gold into the water. "Just enough," she says, "to make soup taste rich." You almost laugh, but you don't. The smell of desperation is too strong. Outside, stories drift through the camp like smoke. Some say there's a village to the north where a priest turned his chalice into coins to feed his flock. Others whisper that he was hanged for blasphemy. The truth, like gold dust, slips through fingers too numb to feel it. In a nearby tavern, if you can call it that, you sit beside a man who claims to have seen gold fall from the sky. "It wasn't a miracle," he insists, his breath thick with ale. "Just ash from a burning palace. The roof was lined with it. When it melted, it rained. You can almost see it, the glittering storm over a dying kingdom." A candle flickers on the table, its wax pooling like liquid light. The barkeep accepts only gold, even for water. He says it's safer than paper, safer than trust. You slide a coin toward him and notice how everyone watches the motion of your hand, the way predators track a wounded deer. When you step outside again, snow has begun to fall. It lands softly on your cloak, turning the world white and silent. Somewhere in that silence, you hear the faint jingle of coins, the kind of sound that can make a starving man follow you into the dark. It's easy to forget, in modern times, that gold once smelled like smoke and blood. It wasn't locked in banks or worn as jewelry. It was scraped from earth by dying men, melted by desperate hands, traded in whispers under moonlight. You walk among those whispers now, feeling the echo of every deal made out of fear. A priest passes by, his robes patched with fabric from old banners. Around his neck hangs a gold crucifix, thick, heavy, gleaming against the gloom. You can't help noticing how many hungry eyes follow him. One night soon, that cross will be gone. You already know it. In your pocket, the coin you carry feels warm, though you're not sure why. Maybe it's the body heat of all the hands that held it before you. The thief, the widow, the dying soldier. Or maybe gold remembers. Maybe it carries stories the way water carries reflections. Distorted, fleeting, but always there. Somewhere in the camp, someone begins to sing. The voice is low, trembling, like a lullaby meant to soothe ghosts. You can't make out the words, but you catch a refrain. All that glitters will rot like bone. You wonder if that's prophecy or warning. The night deepens. A dog howls. A man laughs too loudly, clutching a pouch of coins as though the sound itself could protect him. You turn toward the fire again, watching the sparks rise like golden motes into the sky. For a moment, they almost look like hope. But when you blink, they're gone. Just smoke, just ash, just the reminder that in this world, everything burns eventually. You settle into the cold ground, staring at your reflection in the tiny glint of metal in your palm. The hunger isn't just for food anymore. It's for the idea that something, anything, can last. And tonight, that something still shines in your hand. You carry the weight of that coin as you move deeper into the tangled web of myths and realities, where gold blurs the line between blessing and curse. Think about King Midas, the legendary ruler whose touch turned everything to gold, glittering riches at a terrible price. But the stories you hear around flickering fires aren't just fairy tales. They're warnings etched into history, whispers of hordes buried beneath earth and sorrow, cursed treasures that have claimed lives as surely as any blade. The myth of Midas isn't just a children's story. It's a shadow cast over real kingdoms that believed their wealth could protect them from death, famine, and betrayal. You imagine a king seated on a throne that glows with gold, but whose eyes carry the same fear you felt in the cold camp. Historians still argue whether these legends grew from real events or pure imagination, but the truth lies tangled in every shining coin unearthed by desperate hands. Take the famous tomb of King Tutankhamun, for instance. His golden mask, gleaming as if carved from the sun itself, inspired awe and greed alike. But legend says those who disturbed his resting place were struck down by a curse. Was it superstition or a series of tragic coincidences? You can almost hear the whispered warnings of archaeologists who uncovered the tomb, their excitement shadowed by sudden illness and unexplained deaths. But it's not just pharaohs and fairy tales. Across medieval Europe, tales of cursed hordes passed from village to village. Gold buried in secret places to protect it from invading armies, only to bring ruin to those who dared dig it up. One story tells of a treasure buried beneath an ancient oak. Anyone who sought it would vanish overnight, leaving only echoes behind. You think of how superstition was often the last line of defense when all else failed. Yet gold was as much a lifeline as a curse. Kings minted coins that promised security for their subjects. You picture a blacksmith melting down old jewelry to forge new currency, each coin stamped with the king's seal, a fragile promise of protection. The very act of turning wealth into coins was a survival tactic, a way to keep the economy moving in a world torn apart by war and famine. Historians still debate whether these coins truly stabilized medieval societies or simply prolonged their suffering by creating new forms of dependency. You hear echoes of this argument in taverns where merchants trade tales as often as goods. One claiming that gold was a chain binding people to rulers, another insisting it was a beacon guiding them through dark times. Meanwhile, alchemists, those mystical seekers of gold, believed that the power to create wealth lay just beyond reach. You imagine their cluttered labs filled with bubbling flasks, strange symbols scrawled on parchment, and the lingering scent of sulfur and burnt herbs. Their quest was both scientific and spiritual, a desperate hope that gold could be made, not just found. But many alchemists met tragic ends, consumed by their obsession. Some disappeared into the night, Others went mad, chasing the impossible dream of turning lead to gold. Their failures were as legendary as their ambitions, a cautionary tale of how gold could consume minds as easily as it bought food. You recall a story about Nicholas Flamel, an alchemist rumored to have discovered the secret of eternal gold. Though history shows he was likely just a clever scribe, his legend inspired generations to chase after wealth with a feverish hunger. Historians still argue whether his story is mere myth or rooted in forgotten truths, but it's clear that gold's allure shaped more than just economies. It shaped dreams and madness alike. The deeper you wander, the more you see that gold is never just metal. It's a mirror reflecting human hopes, fears, and failings. Kings hoarded it to stave off chaos. Thieves risked death for a handful, and peasants sold their last grain to clutch a coin that might buy warmth for one more night. You imagine the weight of that coin in your palm. Cold, heavy, and filled with stories of power and desperation. Gold is both a blessing and a curse, a survival tool and a snare. It's the thread that weaves through the tapestry of history, binding together moments of triumph and tragedy. And as you turn the coin over once more, you realize that its true value lies not in the metal itself but in the stories it carries, the dreams it ignited and the lives it claimed. You follow the faint, dusty trail that winds down into the earth, where light barely reaches and the air tastes of damp stone and forgotten secrets. Here, in the veins of the earth, men risk everything for a speck of gold. The miners, faces streaked with dirt and sweat, bodies bent under the weight of shovels and hopes, work in silence, swallowed by darkness. It's a place where breath is precious, and every step could be the last. You watch as a miner strikes the rock, the dull echo reverberating through the tunnel like a heartbeat. Each chip is a gamble. Gold might glitter just beyond, or the tunnel might collapse, burying them alive. Some miners have vanished forever, swallowed by the earth's cold, unyielding grip. The stories of those lost are whispered in the shafts, their names carved in the wooden supports that keep the tunnels from caving in. This is the reality behind the sparkle. A life spent in narrow, suffocating spaces chasing a dream that slips through fingers like sand. Gold is the prize, but the cost is high. You can almost taste the dust in your mouth, feel the sting in your eyes from the dim, flickering lanterns. The air is thick with the scent of sweat, fear, and something metallic. Maybe the gold itself, bleeding from the rock. Historians still argue whether the mining methods of the medieval era were a calculated madness or a desperate necessity. They debate if the high death tolls could have been reduced by better techniques or if the urgency of survival outweighed all caution. But from what you hear, there was no time for safety, only for extraction, for gold, for the future, however uncertain. Mining towns grew around these dark veins, their streets lined with taverns where men drank away their fears, their losses, and the ache of their shattered bodies. You picture a crowded tavern, thick with smoke and the rough laughter of those who gambled with death daily. Some tell tales of gold fever, a madness that grips miners, pushing them to risk everything, to work until their bodies give out or the gold runs dry. You listen to a miner's tale. He speaks of a shaft called the Devil's Vein, rumored to be cursed. Men who ventured too deep spoke of ghostly whispers and cold fingers brushing their necks. Whether superstition or the mind's response to isolation, these stories kept many from descending further, or pushed some to madness. You realize how closely gold's allure and terror intertwine. There's an eerie rhythm to the work. Strike, chip, haul, repeat. Every movement is a step closer to either fortune or oblivion. The miners' lives were a fragile balance on a knife's edge, where gold was both salvation and executioner. In some mines, you find inscriptions scratched into the walls, names, dates, prayers. These weren't just workplaces. They were tombs and memorials, shrines to lives lived and lost underground. You imagine the sorrow wrapped in those words, the silent screams of men who never saw daylight again. The gold extracted fueled wars, paid ransoms, and filled the coffers of kings. But it also stained the hands of those who dug it from the earth with sweat, blood, and death. You think about how often history forgets the miners, the invisible backbone of gold's story, buried beneath legends and riches. Some say the greatest treasure in these mines wasn't the gold itself but the resilience of the people who endured the darkness. You sense their quiet courage, their stubborn hope shimmering faintly, like gold dust caught in a beam of light. As you climb back toward the surface, blinking against the sudden brightness, you carry with you the weight of their stories. The truth that gold's shine comes at a price paid in silence and sacrifice. You look down at your own hands and wonder, if you were forced into those tunnels, how long would you last? Would the glitter be enough to keep you going? Or would the darkness claim you first? Gold means survival here, but survival often means losing pieces of yourself along the way. You step out from the dark, cramped tunnels and find yourself amidst the chaos of a battlefield, where the clang of swords and the roar of soldiers blend into a grim symphony. Here, gold transforms yet again, not into coins or treasure, but into something darker, currency for war. Armies don't march just for honor or glory. They march for pay. The promise of gold in a soldier's pocket can tip the scales between life and death, loyalty and betrayal. You see men lining up to collect their wages, worn and bloodied, their eyes flickering with a mixture of hope and despair. The weight of gold in their hands offers a fragile comfort amid the carnage. It buys the weapons they need, the food that sustains them, and sometimes even a chance to bribe their captors. But every coin spent here has a price, paid in broken bodies and shattered villages. This is the battlefield where gold is both prize and poison. Generals hoard it to fund campaigns. Soldiers cling to it as a lifeline. But the line between wealth and ruin is razor thin. When a king's treasury runs dry, mercenaries switch sides overnight, and alliances crumble like dry stone walls. Historians still argue whether the flow of gold prolonged certain conflicts or hastened their bloody ends. But the evidence lies in every scarred soldier and every plundered village. You walk among the wounded, where gold changes hands in grim barter. Payment for a favor, a secret, or a swift death. You overhear whispers of a nobleman who bought his way out of a siege by offering a chest of gold, abandoning his soldiers to their fate. The cold glint of betrayal stings sharper than any blade. In the muddy trenches, soldiers trade gold coins for scraps of food, bottles of watered wine, or even simple kindness. You notice how the coins gleam dully, coated in grime and blood, symbols of survival as much as greed. One soldier tells you about payday, the brief moment when hope surges through the ranks, only to fade again with the next dawn's call to battle. You think about the fate of those who never received their wages, promised gold that turned to dust. Desertion was common, driven not just by fear but by hunger and despair. The soldier's gold was supposed to be a reward for loyalty, but often it became a cruel joke. Gold also played a sinister role in the darker corners of war. The buying of spies, the bribery of officials, the secret deals that sealed destinies far from the battlefield. You imagine shadowy figures counting coins under candlelight, trading lives and secrets with equal ease. One story stands out. During the 100 Years' War, a French commander allegedly paid a hefty ransom in gold to spare a captured English town. The transaction saved lives but cost his honor. You wonder how many such deals went unrecorded, lost to time but etched in the memories of those who survived. As night falls over the battlefield, you watch the flicker of campfires and the clinking of coins. Gold, you realize, is more than metal here. It's the pulse of survival and the drumbeat of destruction. And as the soldiers sleep, clutching their coins like talismans, you wonder how many will wake to find that gold couldn't save them after all. You find yourself drifting along the winding Nile, the river's surface smooth like a mirror beneath the rising sun. Palms sway gently on the banks, but beneath this serene beauty lies a world where gold gleams as a symbol of power, death, and eternal life. Pharaohs built their tombs to dazzle and protect, covering walls and coffers with gold, hoping to secure their passage into the afterlife. But gold here is more than wealth. It is a key to the mysteries of life and death. The air is thick with the scent of papyrus and incense, and you watch as boats laden with treasure glide silently downstream. These aren't just vessels carrying riches. They're floating tombs bearing the weight of kingdoms past. You imagine the artisans who hammered gold into delicate amulets and masks, each piece designed to guard the soul against evil in the afterworld. Yet gold's glow attracted more than reverence. Grave robbers lurked in shadows, risking curses and death to steal the treasures meant for eternity. Tombs were plundered again and again, and the stolen gold fueled empires far beyond Egypt's borders. You hear whispers of secret societies that traded in these stolen relics, their profits built on desecration and fear. Historians still debate whether the so-called curse of the pharaohs was real or just superstition fueled by coincidence and fear. Some say it was the fear of desecration that led priests to craft tales of deadly curses, while others believe unexplained illnesses among tomb robbers gave the legends life. Regardless, the belief in curses kept many away, preserving some treasures but dooming others to the greed of those brave or foolish enough to challenge them. You gaze at the famous golden mask of Tutankhamun, its serene face frozen in time, eyes made from obsidian and quartz that seem almost alive. The mask's beauty belies the dark history of its discovery. The young king's tomb was untouched for centuries until modern explorers unearthed it, unleashing a wave of fascination and tragedy. The sudden deaths of several members of the excavation team fueled rumors that the mask was cursed. Beyond tombs, gold was woven into the very fabric of Egyptian society. Pharaohs taxed their people in gold, building monumental temples and sponsoring elaborate rituals. You picture farmers, artisans, and slaves contributing bits of gold, whether from trade, tribute, or their own labor, all fueling a system built on the shimmer of this precious metal. On the riverbanks, you see merchants trading gold for grain, spices, and textiles. The Nile's role as a lifeline for Egypt meant that gold often flowed alongside goods, connecting distant communities and sustaining the kingdom's vast economy. But gold's journey was never smooth. Floods, droughts, and political turmoil could turn fortunes overnight. You watch as a caravan arrives, bearing gold dust packed tightly in leather bags. These caravans risked bandit attacks and harsh desert crossings, the precious cargo tempting thieves and officials alike. The traders are hardened by experience, wary of every shadow, knowing that a single misstep could mean losing everything. In one bustling market, a young girl sells trinkets made from gold flakes. Her eyes sparkle with determination, and you realize that gold here isn't reserved for kings and priests. It's woven into everyday life, a lifeline for those striving to survive and thrive. But beneath the gleam, there is always tension. Gold represents status, security, and power, but also inequality and exploitation. You sense the weight of countless stories buried beneath the glitter, lives shaped and shattered by the pursuit of this elusive metal. As the sun sets behind the pyramids, casting long shadows over the desert, you reflect on gold's dual nature here, both protector and predator, symbol of eternity and reminder of mortality. The Nile flows on, carrying with it the secrets of kings and commoners alike, bound forever by the golden thread of survival. You step through the towering stone doors of a grand cathedral, where stained glass filters sunlight into shards of color that dance across cold marble floors. The air inside is thick with incense and whispered prayers, but beneath this sacred atmosphere glimmers another kind of power: gold. Not just in the gilded crosses and chalices, but in the very foundation of the church's influence. Here, gold is faith's currency, a gleaming promise wrapped in both salvation and suffering. You follow the echoes of footsteps as pilgrims and priests move through the nave. They clutch coins and offerings, hoping their gifts will buy divine favor or forgiveness. The church, you realize, has become a marketplace of the soul, where gold funds cathedrals that soar toward heaven, and collections are passed from hand to hand, filling coffers with the wealth of many who have little to give. But the price of this golden faith is steep. Outside these hallowed walls, peasants toil in fields barren from years of war and famine. They scrape the earth for food while the church's treasures grow heavier, built from tithes paid in blood, sweat, and tears. You hear tales of families selling their last livestock or mortgaging their homes to fulfill tithe obligations. Gold that moves upward, away from hunger and hardship. Historians still debate whether the church's wealth was a force for good or a tool of oppression. Some argue that the grandeur inspired faith and community, while others say it deepened inequality and kept the poor in chains. You imagine the complex dance of power and piety, where gold built both shrines and systems of control. Inside a side chapel, you spot a reliquary, a small ornate box encrusted with jewels and gold leaf. It holds a fragment of a saint's bone, a piece of the true cross, or a sacred artifact said to work miracles. Pilgrims come from miles around to see it, believing that touching or even gazing upon these relics can grant healing or favor. The relics, though priceless, are often bought, sold, or traded, blurring the line between holy reverence and commerce. One story lingers in your mind. A wealthy noblewoman who donated a golden statue to the church, hoping to secure a place in heaven for herself and her family. Her generosity was celebrated, but whispers suggest her wealth was gathered through harsh rents on struggling peasants, making her gift bittersweet. You wonder how many such offerings were acts of faith, and how many were attempts to buy salvation with gold. You wander past monks copying manuscripts by candlelight, their robes stained with ink and gold leaf. Their painstaking work preserves knowledge, but you sense the tension between spiritual devotion and the worldly value of the gold used to illuminate each page. Outside, a beggar presses a hand to a gilded pillar, hoping some of the church's blessings might rub off. The contrast between the shining interior and the dirted streets is stark, a reminder that gold's glow can warm some while leaving others in cold shadow. You overhear a heated debate among clergy. Should gold be hoarded for the church's glory or used to aid the poor? Some argue that wealth ensures stability and influence. Others insist that true faith demands sacrifice and charity. It's a question without a clear answer, tangled in politics, belief, and survival. As the sun sets behind the cathedral spires, casting long shadows on the cobblestones, you feel the weight of gold's role in this sacred world. It's both a symbol of hope and a chain of obligation, a bridge between earth and heaven, and a burden borne by many. You step outside, the cool evening air a relief after the heavy incense. Gold still glints in the fading light, on crosses, coins, and eyes alike. You realize that in this world, gold doesn't just buy faith. It shapes it, molds it, and sometimes betrays it. And as night falls, the church bells toll, a reminder that beneath every chime, gold's silent influence echoes through the ages. You walk into a city cloaked in dust and heat, where the air shimmers with the promise of riches but smells faintly of ash and loss. This is a place once vibrant with life, now scarred by conquest. The Spanish conquistadors have arrived, and their quest for El Dorado burns everything in its path. Gold, once a symbol of divine blessing, is now a weapon of destruction. The streets are lined with ruins, homes and temples razed to the ground, their golden treasures plundered and melted into coins and bars destined for distant empires. You hear the whispers of the survivors, stories of villages swallowed whole, cultures erased, and lives shattered by the relentless hunger for gold. The conquistadors marched not just with swords but with greed sharp enough to cut through centuries of history. You watch as priests bless the soldiers' armor, murmuring prayers for divine protection, while native peoples are forced to reveal secret mines and sacred sites. The clash of worlds is violent and tragic, the shimmer of gold blinding those who once revered it as sacred. Historians still debate the scale of destruction versus the cultural exchange that followed. Some argue that the conquest introduced new technologies and ideas, while others emphasize the irreversible loss of indigenous knowledge and lives. You can feel the tension of this debate in the silence of abandoned temples and the laughter of children who no longer speak their ancestors' tongue. You find a battered gold pendant, half buried in the dirt, a relic of a civilization that once thrived here. It glints weakly in the sun, a fragile reminder of what was lost. Nearby, elders recount tales of kings and queens who wore gold as a crown of spiritual power, not just wealth. They speak of ceremonies where gold dust was scattered to honor the gods and earth, connecting people to the land in ways the conquerors never understood. The conquistadors' greed extended beyond gold into the very souls of the people. Forced labor, disease, and warfare decimated populations. You hear the heartbreak in the voices of those who remember the encomienda system, where natives were enslaved under the guise of protection and conversion. Gold's pursuit had become a dark shadow, blurring the line between salvation and annihilation. You glimpse a marketplace, alive with colors and scents, where surviving natives trade woven textiles and pottery for European goods, including gold trinkets they never valued before. The exchange is uneasy, a testament to resilience amid devastation. A story surfaces of a hidden city, rumored to hold untold riches, swallowed by jungle and myth. Treasure hunters chase this legend, fueled by dreams of gold, but haunted by warnings of curses and death. You feel the same pull, the eternal lure of gold's promise wrapped in danger and mystery. As dusk settles, the jungle's sounds rise, a symphony of life persisting despite the scars. You realize that gold here is more than metal. It's a legacy of survival and loss, of beauty and brutality intertwined. And as night deepens, you understand that beneath the ashes, something endures, whispers of a past that no amount of gold could ever truly bury. The sun rises over a restless horizon, painting the California hills in hues of gold and amber. It's the mid-19th century, and the fever grips the land like wildfire. Gold rush fever, a maddening, insatiable hunger that sweeps through towns and camps, turning strangers into rivals and friends into foes. Here, gold isn't just metal. It's the heartbeat of desperation and dreams smashed against the rocky soil. You trudge through crowded mining camps, the air thick with dust, sweat, and the clamor of hammers striking stone. Men with dirt-caked faces and ragged clothes shout out claims, brandishing shovels and pans like weapons. You can almost taste the tension, the mix of hope and fear that fuels every move. The promise of striking it rich is a siren call, but the reality is often grime, hardship, and heartbreak. Gold fever didn't just fill pockets, it filled graves. For every fortune made, countless lives were lost to accidents, disease, and violence. Miners lived on the edge, fighting not only the elements but each other, driven by a madness that blurred the line between survival and obsession. Historians still argue whether the rush was a boon or a curse for California's development, but the scars it left are etched deep into the land and its people. You hear the clang of a prospector's pan as it catches a glint of gold dust. The rush of excitement is palpable, but so is the weariness etched into the faces of those who know the odds. One man tells you of the Mother Lode, a legendary vein rumored to hold untold wealth. Many have chased it, but few have found more than a handful of fortune and a lifetime of toil. The camps are hives of activity, gambling, saloons, and makeshift courts where disputes over claims are settled with fists and guns. You see how quickly gold can turn hope into violence, turning a simple argument into a deadly duel. Women who follow the rush carve out their own survival, selling food, laundry, and companionship, weaving into the fabric of this chaotic new world. You learn of placer mining, where men sift riverbeds for gold flakes, working knee-deep in cold water for hours. The work is brutal and backbreaking, but the reward, however small, feeds the fever. You sense the desperation in every hand, the hope that this handful of dust might be enough to buy a new life. There are stories of towns springing up overnight, only to vanish just as quickly when gold runs dry. You think about the transient nature of wealth here, how fortunes can appear and disappear with the shifting river currents or the collapse of a mine shaft. The landscape is scarred with abandoned equipment, rusted tools, and empty claims. Ghost towns whisper of dreams that turn to dust. But amidst the ruins, life continues, stubborn and unyielding. Native communities struggle to survive as settlers flood their lands, gold-fueled expansion reshaping entire cultures and environments. You hear the tale of Joaquin Murrieta, a legendary figure both outlaw and folk hero, whose story is tangled with gold, revenge, and survival in this wild new frontier. His legend reminds you that gold's pursuit often blurred the lines between justice and lawlessness. As the sun sets, casting long shadows over the camps, you feel the pulse of gold fever, the thrill, the danger, and the human cost. Here, gold was never just a metal. It was the fuel for dreams that could lift you up or drag you under. And as night falls over the California hills, you wonder how many still chase that glitter, caught in the fever's unrelenting grip. You find yourself in a dimly lit chamber, the air heavy with the scent of burning herbs and wax. Candles flicker against stone walls covered in faded symbols, their dancing light casting eerie shadows. This is the world of alchemists, men who dared to chase the impossible dream of turning lead into gold. Their quest is part science, part magic, and wholly consumed by obsession. The alchemist's laboratory is cluttered with strange instruments, alembics, crucibles, and mysterious powders. You watch as a man in a dark robe carefully mixes ingredients, murmuring incantations alongside chemical formulas. The room hums with tension, hope and despair intertwined like the elements he seeks to transform. For centuries, alchemists believed in the philosopher's stone, a mythical substance said to grant eternal life and the power to transmute base metals into gold. This wasn't just about wealth. It was about mastery over nature and death itself. But many paid a terrible price chasing this elusive prize, losing sanity, fortune, or even their lives. Historians still debate whether alchemy laid the groundwork for modern chemistry or if it was a futile pursuit steeped in superstition. What's clear is that the alchemists' experiments blended spiritual beliefs with early scientific inquiry, reflecting humanity's relentless desire to conquer the unknown. You hear stories of famous alchemists like Paracelsus, who challenged traditional medicine and experimented with chemicals to heal and harm. His work blurred lines between science and magic, life and death. And then there's Nicholas Flamel, whose legendary discoveries inspired generations, though evidence suggests his fame was more myth than reality. Many alchemists worked in isolation, their efforts shrouded in secrecy. You imagine the loneliness and desperation that drove them to risk everything for a fleeting glimpse of gold. Some met tragic ends, either from toxic substances, failed experiments, or madness born from chasing shadows. One tale tells of an alchemist who locked himself in a tower for years, emerging gaunt and wild-eyed, clutching a lump of metal he claimed was gold. When tested, it crumbled to dust. His obsession had consumed him, leaving nothing but ruin behind. Despite failures, alchemy's allure persisted, feeding dreams of wealth and immortality. Secret societies and guilds formed, sharing cryptic knowledge and guarding precious manuscripts. You can almost hear the whispered conversations in candlelit rooms, the clatter of metal tools, and the faint scent of sulfur and crushed herbs. You realize that alchemy wasn't just about gold. It was about the human desire to control fate, to rewrite destiny. The laboratory's flickering flames mirror the fragile hopes of those who dared to dream beyond the limits of their time. And as you leave the chamber, the faint glimmer of gold seems less a prize and more a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the greatest transformation lies not in metal, but in the minds that seek it. You enter a bustling medieval marketplace, alive with the sense of spices, fresh bread, and the murmur of haggling voices. Here, gold takes on yet another role. As the foundation of trade and commerce, the invisible thread weaving together far-flung towns and distant kingdoms. Coins clink in leather pouches, and merchants measure gold dust with careful hands, turning it into the lifeblood of medieval economies. You watch as traders from different lands, cloth merchants from Italy, spice dealers from the east, and salt traders from the mountains, gather in a chaotic dance of exchange. Gold is their common language, a currency of trust and power amid uncertainty. The marketplace hums with energy, but beneath the surface lies a fragile balance, where a single false coin or broken promise can topple fortunes. You learn of the rise of the goldsmiths, skilled artisans who crafted not only jewelry but coins stamped with the marks of kings and cities. These marks assured buyers of purity and value, but counterfeiters lurked in the shadows, threatening the delicate trust that held economies together. The threat of fake gold was so severe that some towns appointed moneyers to police the currency and punish fraudsters harshly. Historians still debate whether medieval economies thrived because of gold stability or struggled under the limitations of metal currency. The introduction of paper money in some regions challenged centuries of tradition, sparking suspicion and debate about what truly backed a kingdom's wealth. You overhear a merchant boasting about the Silk Road, a vast network connecting east and west, where gold and goods flowed like rivers. linking cultures and empires. But this flow was fraught with peril. Bandits, harsh terrain, and political intrigue threatened every caravan. Gold was the prize, but the journey could be deadly. A peculiar tale catches your attention. A guild of merchants in Venice reputedly hid their wealth in secret vaults beneath the city, protected by riddles and traps. You imagine treasure hunters attempting to decode these mysteries, driven by greed and curiosity. The guild's wealth was legendary, but so was its paranoia. You watch a goldsmith at work, his hands steady as he melts scraps of metal into coins, carefully stamping each with the seal of the local lord. This process is more than craft. It's a declaration of authority. The king's seal transforms simple metal into a promise of value, a contract that can buy bread or pay taxes. The marketplace also reveals the darker side of gold's influence: bribery, corruption, and exploitation. You see officials accepting coins under the table, merchants colluding to fix prices, and common folk cheated of their hard-earned silver. Gold, you realize, often fuels not just prosperity but greed and injustice. Stories swirl of a merchant who lost everything after being swindled by a rival, forced to flee the city with only a handful of coins. You feel the sting of his desperation, the fragile hope that gold, once lost, might somehow be regained. As the sun dips below the horizon, lanterns ignite, casting golden pools of light across cobblestones and stalls. The marketplace quiets, but gold's presence remains, a silent guardian and a constant temptation. You step away, holding a coin in your hand, feeling its cold weight. Here, gold is more than wealth. It is power, promise, and peril, all intertwined in the endless dance of human ambition. You find yourself at the edge of a vast, storm-swept ocean, where the salt air tangles with the scent of adventure and danger. Here, gold fuels the age of exploration, an irresistible lure that sends ships and souls hurtling into the unknown. The promise of gold drives sailors across treacherous seas, beyond the horizon, and into the mysterious lands whispered about in taverns and courtrooms alike. You watch as a ship's crew prepares to set sail, their faces a mix of excitement and fear. Maps are rolled, supplies loaded, and prayers muttered to gods old and new. Gold is the goal, the treasure whispered to be hidden in uncharted islands, rich with riches beyond imagination. But the journey is perilous. Storms, starvation, hostile encounters, and the ever-present threat of mutiny. Historians still argue about the true motivations behind these voyages. Were they driven more by the lust for gold, the hunger for knowledge, or the quest for power and empire? The answer is tangled in the logs of captains, the journals of sailors, and the fates of vanished ships. You hear stories of famous explorers like Hernán Cortés and Sir Francis Drake, men whose names are etched in history alongside tales of plunder and conquest. Cortés's expedition toppled empires, fueled by gold and ambition. Drake circumnavigated the globe, bringing back chests heavy with stolen treasure, earning both fame and infamy. But the quest for gold was often a double-edged sword. You imagine crews trapped by storms, sinking beneath waves, or dying from scurvy, their dreams of wealth slipping away with every lost ship. You feel the tension between hope and despair that gripped every sailor's heart as they stared out at endless blue. The ocean also carried gold across continents, linking economies and cultures in ways previously unimaginable. Trade routes developed, carrying not only precious metals but ideas, technologies, and diseases. Gold's movement transformed the world, but not without cost. Indigenous peoples faced exploitation and violence, their lands claimed in the name of kings and gold. You glimpse a bustling port city where merchants unload crates filled with gold bars, silver coins, and exotic goods. The harbor buzzes with energy, but beneath the surface lurks piracy, a constant threat. Pirates, both feared and romanticized, sought to seize gold by force, turning the seas into a battleground for survival and greed. A tale surfaces of a legendary pirate queen, and Bonnie, who defied conventions and chased gold with fierce determination. Her story blurs lines between heroism and villainy, a reminder that gold's pursuit often defied neat categories of good and evil. As night falls, The stars will overhead, guiding ships and dreams alike. You feel the restless energy of those who dared to venture into the unknown, driven by gold's bright, deadly promise. And as the ocean's waves lap against the hull, you understand that gold was never just treasure. It was a force that shaped history, drove exploration, and forever altered the course of human destiny. You step into a dimly lit chamber deep within a fortress, where the air hums with the weight of secrets and whispered deals. Here, gold is the silent currency of diplomacy, intrigue, and power, the invisible hand guiding kings and queens as they navigate treacherous political waters. It's not just coins clinking in coffers. It's promises bought and sold, alliances forged and broken under the gleam of golden influence. You imagine courtiers whispering behind silken curtains, their fingers brushing over purses heavy with gold as they negotiate marriages, treaties, and betrayals. The monarch's smile is a mask, concealing the ruthless calculations beneath. A kingdom's fate often sealed by the exchange of precious metal in shadowed rooms. Historians still debate the extent to which gold shaped medieval politics. Some argue it was a stabilizing force, enabling rulers to secure loyalty and maintain peace, while others contend it fueled corruption and endless conflict. Either way, gold's role was undeniable. It lubricated the gears of power and kept the wheels turning, often at great human cost. You recall tales of infamous bribes that changed the course of history. A nobleman persuaded to switch allegiance for a sack of gold, a general bribed to abandon a siege, or a bishop whose support came at a steep price. These acts of gold-fueled treachery ripple through time, reminders that loyalty can be as fleeting as a coin's shine. In the great halls, you see emissaries exchanging gifts, often laden with gold, to secure favor and trust. These gifts were more than tokens. They were strategic investments in survival and influence. A finely crafted golden chalice or an ornate necklace could open doors or seal fates. But gold's influence wasn't confined to high politics. It trickled down into the lives of merchants, soldiers, and peasants. Taxes collected in gold could spark revolts when burdens became unbearable. You hear murmurs of unrest, stories of uprisings fueled by resentment over the unequal distribution of wealth. You watch a royal treasury being counted, rows of gold coins stacked meticulously, each one representing power and possibility. The treasury was a symbol of stability, but also a temptation for thieves and rebels. The threat of theft kept guards vigilant, and legends of hidden treasures stoked the imaginations of treasure hunters. One story lingers in your mind: a clandestine meeting where a secret pact was sealed with gold coins pressed into eager hands. The pact changed alliances and redrew borders, its reverberations felt for generations. You realize that behind every historical event, gold often played an unseen but pivotal role. As the evening shadows lengthen, you sense the fragile balance of trust and treachery that gold maintained in this world of shifting power. It's a game played with smiles and daggers, wealth and whispers, and as the candles gutter and fade, you understand that gold's true power lies not in its shine, but in the shadows it casts over the hearts and minds of those who wield it. You tread carefully through a sprawling plantation, the heavy scent of sweat and earth mingling with the sharp tang of gold dust. This is a world where gold underpins a brutal economy, one built on the backs of enslaved people whose lives are bought and sold like the precious metal itself. The gleam of gold here masks a dark reality, a system of oppression where survival is a constant struggle against chains and cruelty. The clatter of chains and the murmur of forced labor echo through the fields, where men, women, and children work from dawn until dusk. They dig, plant, and harvest, their hands raw and blistered, their spirits worn thin. Gold is the currency that fuels this system, paying owners and traders while the enslaved receive nothing but hardship and despair. Historians still debate the economic impact of gold in the development of colonial empires. Some argue it fueled growth and trade. Others emphasize how it entrenched inequality and human suffering. But few dispute the central role gold played in sustaining the machinery of slavery and exploitation. You listen to whispered stories among the enslaved, tales of secret resistance, hidden caches of gold, and dreams of freedom. Some risked everything to smuggle small amounts of gold, hoping to trade it for escape or leverage. Others crafted intricate codes and songs, embedding messages of hope amid their toil. Gold also bought the tools of control: whips, shackles, and armed overseers. The wealth it generated funded militias and fortified plantations, ensuring that rebellion was met with swift and brutal force. You imagine the heavy weight of fear that accompanied every glint of gold, a reminder of power wielded without mercy. A remarkable story emerges of a maroon community, escaped slaves who established their own settlements deep in the jungle. They amassed hidden stores of gold, using it to trade for weapons and supplies, carving out pockets of freedom in a world designed to deny it. Their resilience shines like a beacon amid the darkness. Yet, even within this grim reality, gold took on symbolic meaning. Enslaved people fashioned jewelry and charms from scraps of gold, embedding cultural significance and spiritual strength into these objects. They connected to ancestral traditions, asserting identity and resistance through the very metal that oppressed them. You observe the paradox: gold as both a tool of subjugation and a symbol of hope. Its value transcended mere wealth. It became a language of survival, coded in silence and sacrifice. Outside the plantation, you see merchants and officials exchanging gold for goods and services, profiting from the system that enslaved others. You sense the vast network of complicity that sustained this economy, reaching from distant continents to remote plantations. As the sun sets, casting long shadows over the fields, you reflect on gold's cruel role in this chapter of history, a shining lure that hid the suffering beneath. You wonder how many lives were broken, how many dreams deferred, all for the glitter of a metal. And as night falls, the plantation grows silent, but the story of gold's dark legacy lingers, a whisper carried on the wind, a reminder that survival often demands a price too high to count. You step into a grand museum, the air cool and still, filled with the muted reverence of history preserved. Behind glass cases lie golden artifacts, crowns, jewelry, coins, each shimmering with stories from ages past. Here, gold becomes a bridge between then and now, a tangible connection to civilizations long vanished but never forgotten. It is a symbol of human creativity, power, and memory. You walk slowly past displays showcasing exquisite craftsmanship, the delicate filigree of a Byzantine necklace, the bold geometry of an Aztec mask, the intricate patterns of a medieval reliquary. Each piece speaks of artistry and identity, of hands skilled in transforming raw metal into symbols of status, belief, and beauty. But gold's journey into museums is complex and often controversial. Many artifacts were taken during colonial conquests, their removal steeped in violence and theft. You overhear a guide explaining how some pieces were looted from sacred sites or purchased under duress, raising questions about ownership and restitution. Historians still debate the ethics of displaying such treasures far from their origins. Does preservation justify the pain of displacement? You think about the hidden stories behind these artifacts, the people who wore them, the rituals they adorned, the meanings they held. In some cultures, gold was more than decoration. It was believed to hold spiritual power, to protect and guide souls through the afterlife. In one corner, you find a display on ancient coinage, tracing how gold coins evolved from simple trade tokens into tools of political propaganda. Emperors stamped their faces and slogans onto coins, broadcasting power and ideology across empires. You realize that gold was not just wealth but a medium of communication and control. You pause before a modern art piece, a gleaming golden sculpture that challenges traditional notions of value and beauty. It's a stark contrast to the ancient artifacts, reminding you that gold continues to captivate human imagination, symbolizing both permanence and transformation. You overhear a debate among curators about the role of museums in educating the public versus preserving cultural heritage. Some argue for repatriation of artifacts, while others emphasize the importance of global access to human history. The conversation reflects ongoing tensions about how gold's legacy is interpreted and shared. You notice a visitor quietly tracing the outline of a golden amulet through the glass, eyes filled with wonder and longing. It's a moment of connection across time, a reminder that despite centuries and cultures, Gold continues to inspire awe and curiosity. As the museum lights dim, you reflect on gold's enduring power, not just as metal, but as a vessel of stories, memories, and identity. It carries the weight of human triumphs and tragedies, dreams and despair, preserved in its shining surface. And as you step out into the twilight, you carry with you a sense of gold's complex legacy, an inheritance that challenges us to remember, respect, and reckon with the past. You stand on the threshold of a modern city, skyscrapers glittering with steel and glass, their reflections echoing the gleam of gold that has traveled centuries to shape this world. Gold's journey from ancient tombs and battlefield coffers to the digital age is a testament to its enduring power, a metal that has defined wealth, ambition, and survival through the ages. But here, in the shadows of progress, gold wears a new mask, one intertwined with technology, finance, and the fragile balance of global economies. You walk through bustling financial districts where gold no longer jingles in pockets but moves in electronic pulses, invisible yet more potent than ever. Traders monitor fluctuating prices, their decisions rippling across continents. Gold's value now affects everything from national reserves to smartphone components, its ancient mystique wrapped in modern complexity. The weight you feel in your hand is no longer physical. It's a symbol of trust and uncertainty in a fast-changing world. The history of gold's survival is layered with paradoxes. It has been a savior and a curse, a tool of power and a symbol of suffering. You think about the miners who risked their lives in dangerous tunnels, the slaves whose labor forged fortunes, the kings who waged wars to protect their treasures, and the alchemists who dreamed of turning metal into magic. Each story adds depth to gold's legacy, weaving a tapestry of human resilience and folly. Historians still debate gold's role in shaping societies. Was it the foundation of progress or the root of inequality? Your thoughts drift to the many faces of gold, an emblem of hope for some, a chain of oppression for others. Its survival is tied not just to its physical properties, but to the stories we tell about it and the value we assign. You pass a museum, where golden artifacts gleam under soft lights, preserved as relics of a time when gold was tangible power. Outside, you see the glow of city lights, some powered by gold-infused technology, others by the ambition it inspired. The metal's journey has transformed from raw luster to digital signal, yet its essence remains, a measure of survival, success, and human desire. You recall the countless lives shaped by gold's promise, the explorers who crossed oceans, the warriors who fought for crowns, the artisans who crafted beauty from earth, and the countless unnamed souls whose struggles and sacrifices remain hidden beneath layers of history. Gold's survival is their story too. As the night deepens, you feel a quiet reverence for this ancient metal that has endured beyond empires, revolutions, and centuries. It is more than a commodity. It is a mirror reflecting the complexities of human civilization, a thread connecting past and present in a continuous story of survival. And as you stand in the glow of the city's golden lights, you realize that gold's true survival lies not just in its physical form, but in the enduring human spirit it has come to symbolize. You've walked far tonight through the frozen lands of history. The gold has faded, the fires have died, but the stories remain. Rest now, traveler. The past will still be here when you wake.